Waiter, I have a complaint to make. There's a dead man in this soup. Oh, dear me. I'm so sorry. The MG4, it's the first of a whole new generation of MG's electric cars. But is it any good? Should you care? Why? Let's find out, shall we? MG, let's go.
Here we are with anchors tying us to what we'll call home, even if the sight of it has not yet touched our eyes. And here we are and we're together, even if we are apart. And we're together when we're together. Something big is happening among us. It's not as if we don't have to deal with our shortcomings. It's not as if we don't have to wipe away the tears from time to time.
So welcome to Tweed Jacket Reviews. And Himley Hall near Dudley in the West Midlands. This is the 2022 MG4 EV SE standard range. Back in September I drove a long-range trophy model at the SMT South Test Day, although not for very long. You really don't get the cars for very long at that event, and so I maybe drove it for about 4 or 5 minutes. Today we'll drive this a little bit more extensively, and we will talk about all kinds of other interesting things. It just remains me to say thank you to Summit Garage for supplying this lovely car for review. So thanks, Summit Garage, thumb it. Before we get into detail about the brand new MG4, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already, and leave a comment below. It really does help us out and helps to spread the love of tweed jackets all over the internet. So the MG4 is quite a nippy little electric car. This standard range model does 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds. The long range models actually do it in 7.7 seconds. On the WLTP cycle, this car is rated at 217 miles. The long-range model for the SE is rated at 281 miles, as you probably would have seen on the extensive sign writing we've got on this particular car. The trophy is actually a little bit less than that. It's about 270 miles. It's because of that nasty rear spoiler on the back of it. I don't know why a rear spoiler would affect the range so much, but it does. I've got the custom setup here for the car. I've got driving in eco mode and the steering in sport mode. I much prefer having firmer steering to lighter steering, particularly because I still drive a lot of cars on this channel without power steering at all. One thing I do like is actually down here on the little shelf, which comes standard on all these MG4s, which you put your phone on top of there, and on higher models for trophy that has a wireless charging pad. Try to find where the USB port is, can be a little bit fiddly, and also the left hand one, which is for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, is for just normal USB. The right hand one is USB-C only, which I don't really like, but a lot of you will have chargers that have USB-C on both ends, so maybe that's more sort of your kind of thing. To drive this car is very, very easy. It's really no problem. We've got maximum regen set in this car, level 3, and I can do, to an extent, one pedal driving in this, particularly as we're now on kind of more urban roads, and I don't really feel as if I need to touch the brakes just to come out to this tricky junction here. The ride is very, very smooth. The turning circle is absolutely astonishing. I've been turning around to do these drive-by shots with Mr. Franks, who is my Tweed Jacket Reviews co-founder. He's with me today, and it's no bother at all. It's so easy to turn around this car. I prefer having a reversing camera, 360 camera that come with trophy models, because this doesn't have either. It only has parking sensors on the back. But you know, some people won't be bothered about that. They also won't be bothered about the price, which is under £26,000 for this car, which for an electric car that does 218 miles and has still quite a lot of equipment, especially this whole MG Pilot suite of safety features that I'll talk about extensively later. That's actually really good value. If you compare it to some of the other MG models in the range, such as the MG ZSEV and the MG5, both of those cost in the region of £30,000 in the most basic form. Even in top trim, this car only costs £31,500, and that's with, you know, blind spot monitoring and the nice alloy wheels and the heated seats and the sort of vertical leather and all sorts of other things, and the natty spoiler on the back. This car, if you wanted to charge it on a wall box, would be around 8 hours for the standard range model. For the long range model, it would be about 10 hours. 0 to 80% on a rapid charger at I think it actually charges at about 100 kilowatts actually, the long range does anyway, would be about 34 minutes. This one I think actually might even take a bit less than that, because it's not got such a big battery. It's only 51 kilowatt hours, and the long range is 64 kilowatt hours. But I'm not sure it's got quite the same charging speed actually. I don't really feel anyway kind of like I'm really sort of putting my effort into driving it. It's not a Land Rover Series 3 or anything like that, which you know, requires effort to drive. This is totally the opposite. I think the longer wheelbase of this car does contribute to the ride comfort, and certainly I'm not feeling like I'm being bumped around an awful lot. Yes, I need to make a slight correction here. So on the long range models, you actually charge at 125 kilowatts if you can find a suitable charger, which is why that charging time of 34 minutes is so brief, going from 0 to 80%. That's remarkable for a car that you know, costs around that money. The top model, £31,500. The range obviously will be affected by the temperature, and today, probably seen from external shots of the car, that it's very cold today. It's hovering around 0, and somebody took the car out just before we were given it for filming. I was on a demonstration drive, so that's why it's a little bit filthy. It's just what happens, unfortunately, this time of year. If you drive around, you just get this kind of grot all over the car. Overall though, it feels just so easy and familiar. I would like a stop button in this car. I think the reason why the car doesn't have one is because the Volkswagen ID3 doesn't really have one. I think that's probably what they've done. And you know, if you weren't sort of filming getting in and out of the car all day like we've been doing, you wouldn't hear those famous MG bongs. But today I have heard the bongs a lot, and it gives me that warm, familiar feeling.
Here we are with anchors tying us to what we'll call home, even if the sight of it has not yet touched our eyes. Here we are.
I wish I could do something more dramatic, viewers, but we have an electronic handbrake, a rotary gear selector, and no start-stop button, so no dramatic pulling on the manual handbrake today. That was thoroughly pleasant. Anyway, let's take a look now at the MG4's more practical side and have a look in the boot. Oh, not more bombs again! As you'll see right on the back of the car, this sign-written example here, this car only costs £25,995 for this standard range SE model. So we look in the boot. Quite an interesting spoiler on here. If it was a trophy, it would actually have a big spoiler at the top as well. 363 litres of space. So it's quite similar to Volkswagen ID3, but it's a comparison that we have made already in this review and will be continuing to make, because this is easily the most direct rival for it that MG make. It's quite a good shape actually, although the motors in the rear of this car, which just move this nice boot liner out of the way, we can see underneath here we haven't got space for a spare wheel at all. You can't fit one to this car, which is a bit of a shame, but that just seems to be the way that things go these days. We've got an LED boot light here, somewhere to store smoothies in this side, which is good. I recommend smoothies. The boot actually feels really quite conventional for a car like this. It doesn't feel like a sort of weird electric car with the motor in the back. It feels really normal. I think this is something that MG's designers have been quite successful in achieving. It's very easy to get in the back of this car. This is my driving position. I'm about 5'11", and there's actually lots of space in here for a car like this. We've actually got tinted windows in here, which I think was the very first MG since 2017 to actually get tinted windows, which is brilliant. Materials do feel quite good. Being the SC, we don't have imitation leather or anything. We've just got cloth seats, but they're absolutely fine actually. The only thing I'm really missing in here is mat pockets. I don't know why it hasn't got any at all. It has got little door bins, obviously electric windows. For the price you're paying for the car, which is just under £26,000 exactly for this car, because it's not a metallic colour, it's pretty good. There's no armrest though, which is bizarre. I don't know why they wouldn't put one in, but it's not here. You do get a USB port down there, which is excellent. It'd be better to have two, but you know, one's probably okay. The door handle feels quite good actually. Just only got sort of hard touch in here, but that's no surprise really for a car like this. Fold the seats like so, and actually you don't even need to remove the headrest. You can just fold them, which is good. Although the seat belts just snap. There's nowhere to put the buckle when you're folding the seat. There is Isofix down here as well, which is very important for families, and I think you can just undo this Velcro when you want to put the Isofix anchors in. That's actually quite a good solution to something like that. It is a bit dark in here. This headlining is a little bit dark, which just modern cars are like that. I've also noticed that there's no seatbelt height adjustment in this car whatsoever. There is a little hook there for your tweed jacket if you don't want to wear it when you're driving. Yeah, it's pretty comfortable in here. The headroom isn't quite as much as I thought it would be. If it was Mr. Franks, he's much taller than me, he'd probably be having his head against the roof. But for something like me, it's absolutely fine. Oh, the bongs. Because it's hovering around 0 today, the car went out for a test drive a little bit earlier on with a potential customer, and unfortunately there's not been time to clean it before we actually do our review, so that's why it's a little bit filthy. Anyway, just driving around, as you know, at this time of year, it's just what roads are like. Anyway, the interior of this car is very futuristic actually. It does borrow some elements from other electric cars, like this frameless mirror that's very popular in car design at the moment. The ID3 as well is similar to this, with this very, very low center console, because there's no need for any kind of drive shaft or anything like that running down the length of the car, and there's no need for an exhaust. The floor is very, very flat. It's much flatter and lower than an MG5, for example. But this was designed on the new MSP architecture that MG just introduced with this car, so that explains why. The MG ZSEV and the MG5 are based on combustion cars. There is no start-stop button, hence why we have bongs. You can actually go in the infotainment system and turn the car off in there, but it just looks better just to have the screens on when I'm in here. Rotary gear selector, very familiar to electric cars since the launch of the ZSEV in 2019. There is the release for the handbrake. I actually did have to use that today, so sometimes it doesn't disengage automatically. And then we've got this enormous cubby down here, which you can put all sorts of things in. I mean, I've got some cables in here. There are some cup holders down here as well, but just having this little platform where the rotary gear selector is just gives this enormous feeling of space and freedom in here. You can also put things in this lidded box here. I don't think this is chilled in this car. And also, this doesn't have wireless charging. The trophy model does have a wireless charging pouch, I think is up here. Even if we did have that, my phone doesn't support it anyway, so I can't demonstrate that. Same infotainment system with 10.25 inches as on an MG5 facelift. The one thing that I don't like very much about this car, and this is different from the MG5, is that there's no physical selectors for the regen braking and the driving modes. They're just not present at all. What you have to do is go into the car mode and just sort of fiddle with the touchscreen until you actually find the driving mode. You can find them relatively easily. And when I first drove this car back in September, I found it to be one of the main disadvantages. However, and this is something that I learned from your comments, and very grateful for nice comments on videos, you can set this little star button here and this little star button here. There are two of them on either side of the wheel. You can set them to bring up the driving modes or the regen braking, and you don't have that problem. It's fantastic. I'm very grateful to know things like that, because I wasn't aware actually at the time. We did that very quickly. Now we've had a bit more time to think about things. That is something that I would very much do exactly when I got one of these cars. I would do that straight away. The steering wheel is, again, it's sort of like a Austin Allegro quartic wheel. The early Allegros had a quartic wheel like this. It's very strange. Obviously it's a lot more common to have this now than it was in '73 when the Allegro came out, but it kind of suits a car like this, I think. The dashboard is actually a little bit soft touch. It's not entirely kind of soft touch, but it's a lot sort of softer feeling than the door cards are. But this is an electric car that cost, in this trim, in this colour, £26,000. I don't think I can really criticise that. Also, we've got new stalks. These are not the same stalks that MG have been using for about 10 years that came out in the MG3 in 2013. They're actually different, and they feel good. The old ones are absolutely fine, don't get me wrong, but these also feel very good. We've got a little screen here. I think this is about a 7-inch screen in front of me, and it's similar again to something like an ID3, where you have two screens, one in front of the driver, one in the middle. But I like this really sort of simple look, and these buttons are very useful. You can adjust the volume on here. You can go back to the home. That's a maximum demist, reading window, and most importantly, the hazard switch is right in the middle of there. And that's for going to the heating ventilation controls. Turned off a maximum demist, I think. It's probably the best idea. And you can actually look in the front, and it's a bit like a smartphone. You can turn Bluetooth on and off and things like that just by dragging this down to the bottom there. So with this right hand screen, the one in front of the driver, we see you've got traffic sign recognition on here. If I go this way with the controls, we can see the tyre pressures, which is good. But the main information here is how far we've gone since the last charge. We can reset the information. This car's done about 2,200 miles since it registered, which isn't very much. There's the information here. We've got efficiency here, average speed, that sort of thing. And yeah, we can reset that as well. This would also show with the autonomous emergency braking system. I think this car's got adaptive cruise control as well, so you'd be able to see it on there. On this screen in the middle, I haven't even really got started with the functions on here. I did just make a mistake though. I said you could configure these two stars to whatever you wanted. It looks like you can only kind of really go to the climate control settings with the right hand one, or SRC, which is the source of the sound, and the left hand one will take you to Android Auto. Or Apple CarPlay, I should say. Now that's very useful. I would personally prefer to be able to go onto the driving section here and change the driving modes just from there, but unfortunately that's not the case. You can't do that, it looks like. Might be wrong, but it doesn't look like I can do that. The driving modes are the snow mode, eco, normal, sport and custom. The custom one for me is very exciting, because for a really long time, and I've been driving these electric MGs, and that's since July 2019, when I was a guest at the Planet Auto channel on the ZSCB press launch. I've always known that if you put the car in sport, the steering gets firmer. If you put it in eco, it gets lighter. What happens if you want to drive in eco, but you want firmer steering? Well, you can have it. You can put in any of these the horsepower in eco, normal or sport, the steering in comfort, normal or sport, and pedal force you can put in comfort, normal or sport, which is great. And you could even have adaptive mode for the regen braking, which is brilliant. I don't know really how that works particularly, but presume the car just sorts it out. I mean, I put that in high personally most of the time, apart from if you're on a motorway, but you wouldn't really want that so much, but that's good. MG Pilot, the famous suite of safety features on here. We've got a driving assist system that we can have in speed limit mode or cruise control mode, lane keeping assistance, driving zone recognition, front collision assist. We can have an alert for your towards emergency braking, or we can have it to come on at the same time. We can actually turn it off if you want to, and the sensitivity alert, you can actually configure that, which is good. And it's even got an unsteady driving warning. And a towing mode. You can actually tow 500 kilograms with this car. Maybe like a very, very small trailer or something like that, but that's better than a lot of electric cars. So we've got the lighting section. We've got auto high beam in this car. Bearing in mind this is the base model, we are missing some features. For example, the 360-degree camera and reversing camera. I was actually quite surprised. I shouldn't have been really, but when we came to a filming location and I engaged reverse, it only brought up a little sort of diagram of what the car was doing, and it didn't bring up any cameras. But the trophy model does have a 360 camera and a reversing camera. You can see why that's £31,500 and this is 26. There are a few more bits that you get. With the safety systems on here, you can auto hold for the handbrake. You don't have to have that. That's actually off in this car. And then we can go into the other menus here. We can look at the Bluetooth section here, call history, and then a keypad. You can dial number. You probably shouldn't do that when you're driving, but really want to, but you can. If we go back to the main menu, there actually are other things in here. You've got an entire user manual inside here, and DB radio, of course. And then there's an energy management section which shows the energy flow. We're on 29% charge. We've got 43 miles of range in this standard range car. WLTP estimate is about 217 miles. We're not running very far today, so that's not really a problem. Also, it's hovering about 0. That will be reduced as well because of the temperature. It's actually quite nice to sort of see this. You can see some of the settings as well on this screen if you want to. And yeah, fiddle with this if you get bored. If you're setting a program or something like that. Let's see if my secret mission documents go in this fancy glove box. Viewers, despite the fact I have MG branded secret mission documents, they're not going in, so we're going to have to put them down there. Nope, don't fit there either. Well, we'll have to go in the door bin. The door bins themselves are quite big. You could fit bottles and things, and maybe some sunglasses, something like that. The door panel is hard plastic at the top. It's okay, it's not cheap fitting or anything. It just would be nice to have some soft material, but it's an electric car that's under £26,000, what can I say? Door handles feel good. These switches here are off a lot of MG models now, and they feel good. We've even still got the good old mirror control that's been in cars for about the last 5 years. I don't even know if, no, there is no power fold function whatsoever. Sometimes on them you can turn it down to the bottom and power fold the mirrors, but there is no power fold on this car at all. Again, that's on the trophy. Electric running switches feel fine. I like this kind of blue stitching that you see throughout the car. That reminds you it's an electric one. Traditionally MGs over the last few years have had red stitching, but that's an electric thing, so that's fine. The vents in here are actually integrated into the dashboard very, very neatly. There are 4 of them, as you'd expect really, but they just don't really take up any real estate really. They're very sort of swish, I suppose. If you don't like cars though that look like an iPad's been glued to the centre of the dashboard, and MG aren't alone in this, my mother's Mercedes actually has the same thing as well, then this isn't really going to be for you. However, for most people, I think they'll find that to be a reasonably familiar place to put things. In conclusion then, what do I think of the MG4? I think the value is astonishing for an electric car. Obviously the price of cars has risen a lot over the last few years, and MG's commitment to keeping the cost of them down and also having a 7-year 80,000 mile warranty is impressive. I don't like certain aspects of the infotainment system. I don't know if this design is particularly my taste either, but it's very impressive nevertheless. Oh dear me, I'm so sorry. Can I put those in water for you? Thank you for watching this episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. I source cars for people on a professional basis. To find out more, please visit the links in the description below. Thank you.